what is resilience? And how can resilience get us through difficult times? What is resilience and how can resilience get us through difficult times?
Okay, so Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, and I would say that I'm excited to be back here on the Mica floor again. My first point of call, I would say before we get to even how resilience can get us through difficult times, how do we build the resilience? So I would talk from personal experiences, what has helped me to navigate through, the different phases of the life that I've been through. And the first point of call for me is always the fact that I know that whatever I go through, Allah knows. So if you look at Surah At-Tawbah verse 51, where it says that there's nothing that ever happens except that Allah has ordained it. So, and when you look at Surah At-Tawbah through 22, the verses through 22 to 23, it also talks about that there's no calamity or anything that happens on this earth that has not been ordained. That is not a decree of Allah. So the first point for me is always the fact that Allah knows. Allah is aware that this thing is happening. And then the second level of comfort and where I start to find inner peace is when Surah Al-Baqarah verse 286, when it says that Allah will not burden me beyond my capacity or my capability or what I can bear. So the second level is that I know that physically, emotionally, whatever it is, I can withstand this. I can go through this and still stand as myself. And so the other verse that I also like so much is the one that says that after every hardship comes the ease. And so I love that thing because it will take me to the point where when I start to talk about how to build the resilience itself, you will see where that comes in. So how have I built my resilience over the year? The first thing for me is that I accept the situation. A lot of people tend to be in self-denial. When things happen, they don't want to acknowledge or accept the fact that this has happened. And when you stay on that point for too long, it doesn't give you the room to take action to change your situation. And so funny enough, I think I've shared my story before on Mica floor, how I became a Muslim. So I have very close family friends. So sometimes I can put a call through and rather than say I have headache, I need to take a rest or take a Panadol or whatever. Yeah, my enemy has a headache. Or they don't say that they have the headache. So I always try to tell them that you have an headache. If you need to rest, rest. If you need to take drugs, don't say that your enemy has headache because first you're in denial that you have a headache that needs to be treated. So a lot of times, I mean, this is just a very mild example, but it can go to the extreme situation where people are in self-denial, And then the other part for me, when I move from the situation and I trust in Allah, this has worked for me. And the reason why it has worked for me is I believe in the verse that says that Allah is closer to me than my jugular vein. So because of that, what I try to do is maximize every touch point of the connection that I can have with Allah. So my tajud, I ensure that I do a lot of istighfar. I sometimes I look at the days that, the Prophet ﷺ has said it's good to fast. I fast on those days. I do a lot of sadaqah. And then I love this surah, the surah to Dua, where, the prophet was down. He wasn't happy because he hadn't received any revelation for quite a while. And then Allah revealed surah to Dua to say, I've not forgotten about you. I'm still here. And so I tend to, I tend to meditate on those a lot. And so moving away from that, there's something I call fighting permanence. And fighting permanence goes back to a research that I came across one time that says that we tend to overestimate how bad or how long a bad situation that we are in would extend to. And because of that, there's some sort of negative self-fulfilling prophecy that we stay in. And so for me, there's something that I call affective forecasting, where I try to say that how long will this situation last? In the next 3 months, would this still matter? Would this still impact this? So I try to estimate. So what that helps me is to frame that problem differently. Whatever I'm going through, I try to frame it differently. And I do that because if you continue to frame it negatively, it's very likely that you will not take any action that will take you out of that situation. So if you say that, oh, because this thing has happened to me, I will never feel joy again in my life. All of the actions that will then follow those framing will be things that will not give you joy. But if you say that this thing is just for a little while, but I know it will pass, then all of the actions that you will take will tend to take you to the place where you can make a change about what is happening. The next point for me is to adapt to reality quickly and see where I can pivot. And I do that based on the story of that somebody spoke to the Prophet and said, I trust in Allah. And I said, Prophet said, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. So for me, it means take action. So if there's anything I need to do, yes, this is now my reality, and I need to pivot. I need to take a specific action. I'm not going to sit down and keep praying, hoping that things will change by itself. I will split it into controllable factors and uncontrollable factors. Those controllable factors for me, I know exactly what I need to do to make a change, and then I will ensure that I do that. So just to wrap things up, right? I will say that resilience is really about how you constantly recharge. It's not, as you go through phases of life, there's no manual to say this is a checklist of, if you check this, you'll be stress-free, you'll never have a problem. Allah said it that He will continuously test us. So there's no manual anywhere to go and do a checklist. So resilience is just how you constantly recharge, not how you endure a problem. So just to recap, I'll say that we have to commit every aspect of our life to Allah, everything from your professional to your family to your social, every single thing about you have to commit to Allah. And then we shouldn't view setbacks as permanent. There's nothing permanent. You look back, I mean, if you're where you are right now, if you look back to some phases of your life, you realize that there are some situations that you've actually been in and you've asked yourself, how will this end? Would I ever get there? But you will now come back to those points and you realize that they've actually ended and you are better off. You have new learning curve to take you through another phase in life. And so one thing I would also say is focus on the events you can control. So a lot of people, they're trying to mingle things up. There's a part of, I love this concept called tawakkul, where you say, yes, I trust in Allah. I've done everything I need to do. Now I put the rest to Allah. But those parts where you can control, that you need to take action, ensure that you start to execute those actions to make a change. Then don't see yourself as a victim. A lot of times people wallow in self-pity. They know the situation, but they just don't want to take action. They tell you all of their problem, and you say, have you done this? They say, will it work? We got answer. They just don't want to do anything. So for me, I would say seek for sources of inspiration. Look back to the things that you've gone through and how you've excelled, how you've been able to come out of those situations and how you've been a better person. And lastly, I'll say always have a positive outlook on the future. I tell people manifest positivity. There are some things that, funny enough, I've somehow written down or I've wished for and prayed about it, that when they come to pass, I'm asking myself, this thing I can remember that I actually thought about it, I actually wrote it down somewhere and it's coming to pass now. So always ensure that your self-fulfilling prophecy is tied to a positive pathway. Don't be too negative about yourself or about your environment or about your surrounding. So I will share my story as I go on, but these are things that have been tested and trusted that have worked for me over the years. Thank you.